Today is Wednesday, May 26th, and I'd like to welcome you to our end-of-year town hall. Board members who are present in the boardroom, we have members Higgins, Holloman, Jacobs, Lessons, Wilson, and Bellamy. And on the phone, we have member Donnelly. So we would like to open up our meeting with the pledge. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin this evening's town hall, I'd like to acknowledge with gratitude the Dena'ina people, past and present, who have lived on these lands since long before Anchorage was here. May we all be good stewards of these lands. Shanam. We have two purposes this evening. The first part of our agenda will be a presentation looking at the data that we have gathered so far from the survey. And the second part of our agenda will focus on public input. Some people have signed up online. There is a sign-up sheet at the door if you didn't get a chance to sign up to speak online. And that testimony will be for 3 minutes when we get to that part of the meeting. So we will start with Dr. Bishop, if you're ready.
Thank you, Madam President. And I will begin by sharing the information thus far on the survey that was sent out. The survey does remain open. You can access it from our website. It was also directly sent out to stakeholders as well as just through social media. So this is our website here. So this is where you can find it. And just wanted to share with everyone that it is a survey that was created on SurveyMonkey and began at the beginning of May. And as of yesterday, over 3,000 individual respondents provided information, and about over 15 groups or nonprofits, organizations. The survey was very simple, had 8 questions, and I'm going to share some of those overall 30,000-foot view of the results thus far, and we'll continue to keep these updated. So as background, again, this is the ESSER 3 input within the regulation in regard to the grant. There is stakeholder consultation. So that is B1, and you can read through that about very inclusive input for the board and district to receive. The plan is for, of course, to have input through survey abilities, both at the individual level, student, parents, community members, employees, as well as stakeholder groups that I just mentioned, our partners, other stakeholder groups in Anchorage. May 26th town hall, which is this evening, again, sharing results and receive additional input as the board president mentioned. And then again, on next Tuesday at our next board meeting, there'll be a specially reserved time not to exceed 45 minutes for additional public testimony, but also written testimony is also being received and posted. So I'll just begin. One of the questions on there also not only discussed about the ESSER funds and their expenditures, but also the board was interested in just the year. This has been referred to as a pandemic year. We've all experienced it around the world. And we, as a learning organization, wanted to receive feedback on that. Things that worked well this year, and you can see the percentage of respondents were in these categories primarily. So these things were coded, they were open-ended questions, and they were coded and defined as statistically significant in these areas. Things that did not work well, and I want you to pay close attention if we can go to the things that did work well. If you take a look at the second one, online learning, flexibility and accommodation, scheduling and asynchronous Wednesdays showed up as being things that worked well. If you go to the did not work well, you will see some of these same inputs. And I wanted the board to note that throughout my experience through the pandemic, as well as at our board meetings, as well as through this survey, there are certainly differences of opinions for which Anchorage School District must hear in regard to the experiences of their students and then how we can improve those experiences. And so there is no single answer, no single ta-da, that we are hearing many different voices on the exact same construct, but differences of opinions, which is a good thing. So let me get to the stakeholder operational spending priorities. Jim Anderson, our CFO, outlined the examples of the spending priorities for allowable uses. There are, of course, this is a federal grant, and with grants, there's always tied duties and strings, if you will. And so these are allowable uses of the funds that the district receives. And we categorize them into two different areas, operational and instructional. And here are some of the results in regard to the operational asks or allowables that we shared with them. Of course, they're in the health and safety supplies, facility repairs, air quality of improvements. You may have heard this if you're paying attention, reading, listening to the news. All of these things have been discussed at the federal level in regard to use of the funds as well. And then incentives for recruiting and retaining staff in hard to fill positions. So the monies can go for individuals as well. But that's an HR function, so we place it under operational. The highlighted areas are the on the Likert scale from less important to more important. They had a rate of 5. Of course, a lot of things resonate in the middle generally. 1/5 of things are in the middle, but then you can see the outliers on the sides. Generally, the 1s and 5s will show as you move to the different ends. Again, it's a bell curve. You probably can identify that. Many times that's what is demonstrated. But to the right are most important. Lots of things are most important to our community. And so I'll go to the instructional pieces as well. Summer school and after school programs, addressing learning loss, new services to students to accelerate learning, focus on underserved students. So these are all, again, allowable areas provided as examples within the grant. And these are demonstrated outcomes and respondents who shared what they thought. Again, many people did not, of the respondents, over 3,000, not all answered every question. About 2/3 answered every question on the survey, and 1/3, pick and the individuals, selected and non-selected. Some of them were drop-down choices, and others were fill in the blank, open boxes. So with that, just to share what has come out, just in general terms again, of just a 30,000-foot view, addressing learning loss by increasing existing programs, facility repairs and air quality improvements was one of the highest, as well as focus on underserved students. So we want to look at, one of the questions was, to what degree was your family impacted economically by the pandemic? And this one surprised us. It was about 15% said that they were highly impacted. And of course, we had the middle ground somewhat and not at all. The next question it asks us then, who were the people who answered the survey? We always look at that. And on the right-hand side of the district demographics, always seeing data with a relevance of out of how many or what does that mean? So we always like to ground that in the district as a whole. Many categories were represented or overrepresented. Some were underrepresented. We're going to continue to reach out through our stakeholders and our departments to the families and communities in our school areas that represent some of these groups, just to see if we can gain more insights. There were quite a few, 1/5 of our respondents chose not to answer the demographics, race, or ethnicity question. Actually, they answered it saying that they didn't want to answer. So the respondents, who are they? And if you notice, the total number is more than 100 because you could be a student and an employee. We hire students in the summer, so you could do that. You could be a parent and an employee. You could be a parent, community member, and an employee. So just wanted to share that is why that's over 100. We did not create the different individualized sets of them because this is, again, just a general broad overview to take a look at who engaged in the survey. So I shared a little bit about agencies and organizations, and it was important that different community groups that work with ASD, and we encourage others as well for the organization. My email is on the website. I can be reached. Our board secretary, my secretary, can be reached to have this survey directly delivered. It doesn't have any of the ethnicity questions on it. It strictly is asking about the needs and the funding priorities, not the other questions asked. So we can provide, and it asks to list the organization from which you represent and are answering. So we can continue to accept these of the organizations that were received yesterday. The data that are going to be shown are from these agencies and organizations. There are others that continue to come in, but we're welcoming them. But again, it's a mind's eye of other organizations who work with young people as we do and what they see. So the top 3 for our agencies and organizations were a focus on underserved students, addressing learning loss by increasing existing programs, and summer school and after-school programs. So all of the open-ended responses for our community and organizations focused on student supports. The responses on the individualized were really vastly different. They were I'll give you some examples. In supporting educators and offering additional supports for educators, changing educators. They were, the safety mitigation was excellent. That's what we like the best. Or invest more in that, or it was too much. We shouldn't have done it. And so, or we had to exclude quite a bit with just inappropriate language. So there was a lot of, I would say, in just a difference in this survey in just anxiety and stress in regard to just the experiences this year. And I do share that that literally has occurred when in the data as well, you see what worked best, online learning, what didn't work, online learning, what was good, twice monthly communication, what was bad, twice monthly communication. It went to spam, it did this. So those were, again, vast experiences in our community. And I look forward to bringing folks back together, really focusing on student learning, keeping the fundamentals of learning, the fundamentals, and moving forward with preparing students for life success, career success, college success, exactly the way the board's goals have asked us to do. So with that, that is the summary of the survey. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Dr. Bishop. We have about 10 minutes if the board would like to ask some questions. If not, we will go right to our testimony. We have 7 people that have signed up. So if there are any, yes, Kelly. Member Lessons.
Thank you, President Bellamy. Yeah, as a parent respondent to this survey, I appreciated the survey and I appreciate this breakdown. What I didn't actually understand is, what does increasing existing programs mean? Is that the number of programs? Is it the breadth of offerings? Is it high impact small group tutoring? Like, what does increasing existing programs, what was intended by that question or that option?
Through the president to member lessons, that was a definition provided by the federal government, and it can mean all of those things, meaning that you can spend it on what you spend things on right now, would be how I interpret it.
Yes, Member Wilson.
I just wanted to clarify, how long will the survey be open, or is there a closing date?
And that's a great question. It will be open for another week. So there's still time for the public and organizations to give feedback or input. Okay, let's see, anybody else? Let's see, I don't see Mr. Donnelly's hand. Okay, Member Lessons.
One more quick question. What were the channels that ASD sent this survey out through? I don't remember receiving this, again, with my parent hat on, from my principal. I think something like messages from principals about how important feedback would be useful in generating additional community response.
Through the president to member lessons, it went out as a direct email to all parents of our students, as well as others in ASD Connect. There's over 140 email addresses in that category in the ASD Connect. It was on social media. We put it media response in the news and the radio. So KTUU announced it, the radio, as well as schools had this, but of course schools were ending when this was coming about. And so there's a lot more priorities in schools in regard to the last week and celebrating success probably than this.
Other questions? Okay. Seeing no more questions, we will get to the people who have signed up to testify. We're in person. We have Annie Massey. Sure. Thank you.
Do you want me to take a picture for Member Donnelly? Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Member Donnelly, we will send you a picture. Okay.
We'll actually just email it unless you want a quick picture. Yeah.
All right. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Annie Massey. I'm a parent of 3 children, 2 in the Anchorage School District. I represent a grassroots effort called Parents' Rights in Education. And with me today are some supporters, and I hope they would stand. Thanks, guys. We thank you for this opportunity for folks to share their thoughts and feelings. First, Anchorage School District needs to be reminded their loyalty lies within their clients in this municipality. We are stakeholders and beneficiaries of this public accommodation. ASD loyalty has relied heavily on the agenda as being inserted by federal, state, and local government, national, state, and local NEA union affiliation, including the AEA, the ABC, the multiple state professional and boards, associations, and councils. This intrusion has created a conflict of loyalty within the governing bodies of our school boards, resulting in the abandonment of faithful representation of true community and replaced with the interests and agendas of these organizations. This corruption has disrupted and influenced the true purpose of education. Second, this district and NAEP data reveals our students are not well served by public education, and the OECD data shows the nation as a whole is not well served by public education. This is occurring because this district has lost its purpose by attaching to unnatural interests and commitments that have shifted loyalty away from true stakeholders towards an agenda that has no business in public schools. It used to be that education existed to support parents in educating our children. Today, it strives to replace parents in our fundamental role and God-given responsibility. Finally, between the conflict of loyalty and the dysfunctional roles created in public education, our state schools have abandoned and failed our children. With that in mind, we ask this board and administration to rededicate itself to represent our interests by adding the following to the agenda in the fall. Prioritize spending the American Rescue Plan money towards the classroom and increasing student learning. Our classrooms are already safe enough. We do not need ventilation units. Restore and respect parents' fundamental rights to direct the upbringing of our children in education, including medical privacy and freedom. ASD will rededicate itself to the agenda of residents. Remove, suspend, or ban altogether the planning, engagement, and practices surrounding critical social justice ideology from administration, policy, statements, commitments, teacher training, professional development, resources, curriculum, including diversity, equity, and inclusion, renaming of schools. The Smart Start plan must include, if any, input from families, and priorities for the fall that do not create barriers to learning and deter use of this public accommodation. All needs for students must be determined by and with every parent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, telephonically, we have Danielle Kemp. Are you on the line?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You have 3 minutes.
All right. Thank y'all this evening. And my name is Danielle Kemp. I am a retired Army combat officer. I am a teacher here in the ASD and a parent of 2 ASD students. I'm also the co-chair of the Human and Civil Rights Committee for the AEA, and also the president and co-founder of the Alaska Coalition of BIPOC Educators, whose mission is to champion equity in education for communities of color in order to achieve equality. Our vision is equity until equality, with our top priorities being health and safety of educators, students, communities of color, equity in academic opportunities and curriculum, and the hiring and retention of educators of color, with a goal being to ensure that their needs are met with fairness and equity. I'm calling this evening to express my interest in how the American Rescue Plan money or funds should be spent. And I believe that they should be used in the following manner. To make sure that we have a racially equitable curriculum within the ASD. I can tell you from personal experience, looking at my son's homework sometimes, it makes me cringe at some of the things that in the 21st century nowadays that they are still teaching these kids. Trust me when I tell you, this is nothing new. This is the status quo that we need to change. All right. As a parent of Black children, teaching them, that, slaves had it, didn't have it that bad, is a no-go. Or that, where were the Lakota Nation when they were trying to build the can't remember, losing a train of thought here. Not the Washington Monument, but you know what I'm saying, in North Dakota. So making sure that annual racial equity training for all staff to grow a culture of equity, knowledge, and advancement through the ASD, and also bringing on extra staff and particularly people of color, to make up for that gap that we do see and recognize in the ASD. We should not be cutting educators at this time. As a matter of fact, teachers are the most important part of a child's education. As such, we must use this funding opportunity to fill in those gaps that we know exist. As a prime example, my school, Russian Jack, has been cut by 2 teachers and 1 counselor, yet we're expecting more students this coming year than before. And, you know, this needs to be rectified. And just to touch on all those opponents of culturally responsive teaching and social.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp. Our next speaker in person is Maria Elva Edwards. You have 3 minutes.
So forgive me if I stumble, I get kind of nervous.
Okay.
First and foremost, I want to say my thanks and gratitude to the ASD School District for all that you do, and especially to the teachers, especially Mr. Chatwell for being awesome this year for my son. Today I want to present an idea, something new and exciting for us to chew for a little while and think about, and possibly implement into not only this coming year, but into future years and generations of Anchorage youth. On March 30th, we had a hearing on the instructional equity policy. I want to quote some statements that lit a spark for me. Dr. Dina Bishop, our superintendent, said, "This meant equal access to our students, and we want all students to achieve." Dr. Mark Stock, our deputy superintendent, stated, "Equal access to our students and world-class education in Anchorage." He stated that he believed the secret recipe was high quality standards and low variance. Let me repeat that. High quality standards and low variance. The question is still somewhat unanswered at the end of the video. How do our students get this equally accessible, high quality education to our special programs, such as Ignite, AP courses, charter learning programs, etc.? Today, I want to challenge this. If we believe in equality for all, why do we separate our students this way? Why not teach these programs for everyone? Some arguments may be funding, test scores, or parent concern, but others will hold their children back, possibly. I strongly believe the way to engage all students at all levels and really implement equity and teaching to our students from preschool to high school is intermixed teaching. Mentors for our students that are classmates. How to engage a sense of community to our students. Showing respect when engaging all levels in the classroom. Ignite programs becoming accessible in our regular classrooms. Having the Ignite children mentor the others and bring the others up so that they too can be on that level. I believe this is how we raise scores on a national level for our district. Charter programs are no longer inaccessible to students and only allowable to those through a lottery program. Teach these ideas in our standard public school system. Have music and band for kindergarten and first graders and second graders. Teach language at preschool. Have sports teams in elementary, beginning in kindergarten or preschool. Why are we limiting ourselves? It does sometimes always circle back to funding or whatever it may be that blocks movement like this forward. But I believe when we all work together, anything is possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, telephonically, we have Ashley Gaines. Are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I will probably have me 3 minutes. My name is Ashley Gaines. I am chair of the Anchorage NAACP Youth and College Program, and also work in with Rosalind and Mr. Kemp, who spoke just a minute ago. And I just wanted to speak to the American Rescue Plan as far as using it to enhance our school's teaching of history. I believe I am a product of the Anchorage School District, and as a student, as an African-American student, I kind of found it disheartening that when history was taught to students of color, that Black history was not taught in its full extent, and it was always just stopped at Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. And there's so much more to Black history. It kind of left a sour taste in my mouth when I just had to, was required for me as a student to take Alaskan Native Studies to graduate. But in all, when Black history is American history and it's not taught fully in our schools. And so I just want to encourage the Anchorage School District to really look into expanding Black history in our schools, elementary all the way up to high school, so our students have a full understanding of what really what Black history is, and the contributions that a lot of African Americans have made to the United States. And like Mr. Kemp said, he couldn't get it out, but I think what he was trying to say was it was slaves who built Washington, D.C. and most of this country, and a lot of them are not recognized for it. And our students, in order for them to know the fullness of American history, they need to understand what really happened. And so I just wanted to encourage the school board to please really take into consideration about fixing the curriculum and adding Black history as a required class as well, because it is American history.
Thank you. Next, telephonically, we have Ayu Kasatak. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you. The rescue plan funds are to provide school districts to safely reopen and sustain the operation of schools while addressing the impact of COVID on students. My comments are focused on the impact on our nation's students. As this pandemic has made very visible, the risks and tolls faced from COVID have not been equally shared. Systemic racism set in motion long ago has led to generations of disparity for peoples of color across our society. COVID has laid these issues bare in all the statistics you're very familiar with. Black, Indigenous, and peoples of color, BIPOC families, are less likely to have the privilege and means to choose options that keeps their families safe from the virus, whether for school or work. CDC stats show that death rates for children with COVID have been greatly skewed. More than 8 out of 10 child deaths related to COVID are Black, Indigenous, and Hispanic children. Disproportionately, our children and families pay the ultimate price in this pandemic. For Native peoples like me, though we represent only 2% of the overall U.S. population, we've experienced the highest death rate per 100,000 people than any other demographic. To ensure ethical COVID mitigation, our district leadership must use an equity lens in all decision-making and across its operations. Treating all students in ASD the same when our risks aren't equally shared perpetuates the unequal outcomes we've already experienced. To advance health equity in ASD, I have 3 specific suggestions. Launch a district-wide racial equity curriculum and policy audit. Map out a phased strategy to mitigate inequities that are found, including building culturally relevant curriculum for students and teachers, and enact annual racial equity training for all educators to build capacity and advance equity throughout ASD. To protect our community, we need strong leadership that's attuned to the disproportionate impacts of its decision-making and makes equitable decisions based from that center, which ultimately benefits everyone. Our community is stronger when we are all healthy and strong.
Thank you. Next, telephonically, Laura Norton Cruz.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you for having me. My name is Laura Norton Cruz. I am the mother of a rising 2nd grader at Government Hill Elementary and a preschooler. I'm a social worker and public health professional. I'm a former 3rd grade teacher in a dual immersion program. My testimony is a little bit less prepared than normal because I spent today taking my kids to get COVID tests because of a school-based exposure. And in the same day that I, had to take my kids to get COVID tests, I found out that the summer school policy for masks is to make masks
optional. Today's COVID scare, and we're still waiting for the results, is a reminder that COVID is not over, that the risk our kids face is still significant because they're too young to be vaccinated. And you know, it has been the priority of the district over the years to use data. And I know that's a really important priority of the superintendent, to have data-driven decision-making. Well, the data on masks is clear. They work. They work to prevent transmission and to prevent viral load. And as IU just shared, the child COVID mortality disproportionately affects Black and brown children. And so I'm worried about the effects that this mask optional policy will have on students this summer, and particularly if this is carried into the fall. So as a parent and as a public health professional, I want to very strongly state my support for required masks until all children have had the opportunity to get fully vaccinated and have antibodies. Secondly, this brings me to the issue of, you know, the culturally responsive teaching and how to spend federal money. So in terms of data-driven decision-making, one of the existential threats facing education, really the primary one, is that children who are overwhelmed with stress, with toxic stress is what it's called, when children are overwhelmed by stress and it's beyond their ability to cope, it makes it very hard for them to learn and to behave and to be able to pay attention in the classroom. So it is incumbent on the district to have a trauma-informed approach to really prioritize trauma-informed education, which includes addressing overwhelming stressors like systemic racism that children face. What we know is that children of all races and socioeconomic statuses experience adverse challenge experiences and experience overwhelming sources of stress that can interfere with their ability to learn, but that Black and brown children are much more likely to be punished for trauma-related behaviors than white children are. And so the school district needs to prioritize, and this is what I would love to see the federal funding spent on, is trauma-informed and equity-informed education, culturally responsive teaching, and trauma-informed teaching, and not just teaching, not just the classroom, making sure that the district has the support they need. There are teams in every school to implement trauma-informed and equity-informed teaching practices, as well as disciplinary practices, and also to have social workers and to have other people in the schools who can provide kids and families the supports that they need. We know.
Thank you. Your time is up. Next, in person, we have Danielle Fisher, I believe. Fisher? Yes. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Danielle Fisher. I recently finished my junior year at Polaris K-12 school. And the first thing I want to say is that my school and its staff are great. They're amazing. And yet, I've come today to communicate a dire threat to the well-being of every student at my school and in the district. Even at the height of this pandemic, I was more afraid that my school would be unable to educate me due to budget cuts than due to the virus. I've been at Polaris for 12 years. I remember a time when each classroom was full of engaged kids and every academic need was covered by a qualified, enthusiastic teacher. This is now a tragic memory. Every year, more and more classrooms go dark and empty. Our teachers are overworked and forced to teach subjects with which they have little experience. This has directly decreased the quality of my education and will permanently mark the academic careers of every student in the grades behind mine. At the end of the year before last, we were forced to lose one of our 3 science teachers and a beloved mentor to myself and many of my peers. There were other firings that year as well. As a result of this, we were unable to offer a full physics course this year, crucial for college-bound students, particularly in STEM fields. So students were forced to either take a physics course without rigorous math, which did not adequately prepare them for college physics, or pay for an online physics course, which I think this last year has shown is simply not as good. This is not an isolated incident. Consistently over the last several years, critical classes at my school have been offered at the same time as other critical classes, or not at all. Meanwhile, history teachers who haven't thought about science in decades hit the books to teach middle schoolers' chemistry. This is, of course, due to our losing 2 to 3 staff members every year for the past several consecutive years. There is no fat to trim. We have been bled dry. There are no more efficiencies, and my school is dying. You, as elected members of the Anchorage School Board, are entrusted by our community with the responsibility to protect students' educations here. This is because a good community is founded in a good school system. The continuation of these budget cuts is the single greatest danger to the education of my peers that exists, and that makes it a danger to our community. It seems we were able to use federal aid to bandage the wound this last year, but eventually that money will run out, and therefore I'm asking you to do anything in your power to increase the district's budget to match inflation and enough beyond that to rebuild the facilities we have lost.
Thank you, Daniel. So that concludes the individuals who have signed up to testify. Is there anyone in the room that would like to testify at this time? Come forward, please. And if you would state and spell your name, that would be great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rochelle Griffiths, R-A-C-H-E-L-L-E, Griffiths, G-R-I-F-F-I-T-T-S. I'm here to speak out against the critical race theory. I think it's wrong that it was passed during the COVID lockdowns. And I think we need to look at that. We need to look at it again. It's the parents' responsibility to instill good morals into their children, and it's the Anchorage School District's job to work on education. I went through the Anchorage School District. I'm in college right now, and I want that for my child. I want that for my neighbors. I want that for every child. I think we really need to focus on that. And also, I don't trust the critical race theory is as good as it's being said that it is. If you really look at it, it could be that it's to discriminate against a certain group of people, and nobody in the Anchorage School District and their families should feel like they don't belong. And now I'm half white, I'm half Alaska Native, so I know both sides, so I have that advantage. And I've seen us come a long way. We've come a long way dealing with racism. It's not what it used to be. I'm a little bit older. I'm about 32, so I've seen us come a long way. Let's not go backwards. Let's relook at critical race theory and make sure that all students feel comfortable going to school. Also, if it is going to divide it, and it could distract our children from learning, and that's absolutely not okay. Distractions are not okay. We need to get rid of them. We need to focus on the children's education to set them up for success. It's very important. And let's see, as far as American Rescue Plan money, I think it should be focused on education. Anything we can do to support all people, doesn't matter what your skin color is, let's do right by all people. And I really appreciate, I heard today from the lady who spoke before me that masks are optional for summer program. And because they're optional, I will allow my daughter to go, because I think we have to put the COVID behind us and move forward. We cannot be masked forever. We have to just, go forward without mask and allow our children to breathe, allow them to see people's faces. It's really great to see all of your faces today and to be here. Yeah, COVID's behind us. No critical race theory. I think it really needs to be looked at, and please take seriously all of the parents who will write in, call in, show up at the next board meeting, because this is our district, and these are our children. So please work with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? You've already testified, ma'am. Thank you. You've already testified. Okay, not seeing anyone else. That concludes our agenda. If there are board members, I would like to give you an opportunity to make a few comments if you choose. Member Holloman.
Yes, thank you. Not too much. I think part of the impetus for this is just knowing that in a tumultuous year, we do some things that work okay, and we want to be sure we grab those and take them forward with us. I do want to emphasize that the board has not voted anything that promotes or adopts critical race theory. And it has not voted anything that would change instruction in classroom for some time. I think there's a misunderstanding about discussions that were had, but we simply have not. So we can't revisit it because it's not something that was ever voted on. We did vote an anti-racist policy, but it doesn't cite critical race theory, and that's just not part of it. So I do hope people will look specifically at what they want us to reconsider or what they feel like we're going forward with that is worrisome. That part of it, while it's part of a discussion, is just not there. So I hope in the future we can help clear that up going forward, but thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is really just a response to this afternoon's message about masking. I was a little bit surprised, maybe a lot surprised, that we will allow masking to be optional before all of our children are vaccinated. There were 4 kids in my daughter's class who had COVID this year, another one who was one of the first kids in Alaska to have the multi-symptom, the inflammatory symptom. COVID is not entirely behind us. And I think it's really important that parents who would like to get their children vaccinated, but haven't yet had that opportunity and won't have that opportunity until sometime in the fall, I think we need to guarantee them safety and security. The CDC advises masking and social distancing. I'm perfectly fine sending our kids outside unmasked, but I don't support this current change in policy.
Any other comments? With that, Dr. Bishop, did you have any final comments?
No, Madam President, thank you.
Okay. With that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I've got my hand raised.
I'm sorry, Member Donnelly, I did not see you. You have the floor.
I'm sorry, it's Madam President. I apologize. Member Holloman's right. The board has not voted to adopt critical race theory, but the board did twice vote not to not use critical race theory. And we also have multiple critical race theory books on our website. And although those are not specifically designated for children or for student instruction, they are on the ASD website. And there is a total lack of any counter thought being utilized on the ASD website. And that remains very concerning, that there would be no balance appearing on our website in regards to critical race theory. We have books that advocate it, but we have no academic publications that express concern about it. And additionally, the ASD has sponsored multiple classes now on critical race theory, where the 2 leading critical race theory books are being utilized in those classes. So while it has not been adopted to be in our classrooms, there's some very troubling utilization of critical race theory by our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Donnelly. Seeing no other hands for comments among the board, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.